Hi, I'm Gaz. We're here at LD Tattoo Studio in Newbury. And today I'm going to be showing you how I tattoo in my neo-traditional / new school style. Today we're working on a horror Mario piece from Super Mario Brothers. Let's go. I'm going to quickly run you through my workstation and some of the equipment I use. First things first, machines. Recently I've really been liking the Tora from JD Machines. It's a really nice piece of kit, very well made. It's got an armature bar, so it's a straight up and down, really nice crisp hit, very much like a coil machine, which for me, for outlining, is perfect. Inks, I generally use Eternal. They're tried and tested. They're really good in terms of usability. The thickness or the viscosity of the ink is very consistent across the range, and it heals really well. I like to use all Butterlux products for lube and for soaps. It's brilliant, it all smells amazing. It's just the best stuff. And cartridges, I like to use Killer Ink's Stella 2.0. Really good, really high quality. It's got the cartridge sizes printed out, so it's really easy to use. You can just reach and grab the right one that you need. Okay guys, that's everything. Now we can get into the tattoo. Okay guys, first thing I'm going to do is the stencil. First stage is to get the skin prepared, so I'm going to clean it, sterilize it, shave it. What I like to do is start off with green soap, Butterlux obviously, and a little bit of their foaming soap as well. That acts as a sort of a shaving foam. It just helps to shave the hair off a little bit more easily. I like to shave a larger area than what I think is necessary, just so that you've got a bit of extra room to move the stencil around, and you haven't then got to go back and clean it all and shave it all again. Area's shaved. Now we need to make sure it's nice and dry. So I'm just going to get rid of all the excess soapy water with a clean paper towel. Next stage is skin prep. It's alcohol based. It's going to clean the skin, and it's going to get rid of any excess oils that are also sitting on top of the skin. This is going to help the stencil just to stick really nicely. Right, now that the skin is clean, hair free and dry, I'm going to offer the stencil up just to find where it needs to sit. At this stage, you're going to want your client standing in as natural a pose as possible. I'm going to make a couple of markers just with a red Sharpie so that I know where the stencil needs to be once I've got the application fluid on. Right, next stage, stencil fluid. I like to use Butterlux's stencil glue, one of the best products I've ever used. So we're going to get a nice amount on there. Really rub it into the skin as well. Make sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies so that you don't have any gaps in your stencil. And again, just pushing it out into a larger area than what I think is necessary, just to make sure that every bit is covered. We're going to let that dry for a second, or not dry, but go a little bit tacky. And what I like to do is, once it has gone a little bit tacky, just go back in with a little bit more. I find that makes it just really, really sticky. It's going to help to keep the stencil in place. Okay, skin's tacky, ready for the stencil. So I'm going to line it up with my markers. Just gently place it on the skin. And then I'm going to smooth out from the middle of the stencil towards the edges. And make sure we haven't got any creases or crinkles, and that every part of the stencil is in good, solid contact with the skin. And then what I like to do is just leave that on there for sort of 10 seconds or so, just whilst the fluid is continuing to dry. If you leave it on there, it's just going to suck up as much of that stencil as possible. Now's the moment of truth. So start from the top corner, gently peel the stencil back. And the reason I go slowly is just in case any bits haven't stuck properly, you can then just smooth it back on. If you whip it all off, you're going to have to replace the stencil, which is a pain in the ass. Right, final checks, all looks good, stencil's in place. We're ready to get started. First thing I'm going to do is put a thin layer of Butterlux balm just over the top. It's going to help to protect my stencil and just going to allow me to wipe excess ink away a little bit more easily. First thing I'm going to do is start with some of these blood lines. I'm just going to put those in place just in case we do lose the stencil somewhere along the way. So that's just going to be using distilled water. All right, here we go. For this part, I'm just going to move real quickly. I don't want to cause any damage to the skin really. I just want a quick little, blood line, just so that I know where my shades and my shadows need to be. I'm using a type 5 for this. I think my machine is running at about 5 volts. Another reason I start with this is just for my client's sake really. Just a few quick zippy little lines just to ease them in. I find that most people, once they're past the first 5 or 10 minutes, are pretty good after that. They tend to relax into it. But yeah, that first few minutes can be a bit of a shock to the system, so I like to just ease people in. All right, next I'm gonna outline with some colored ink, just in some of these details in the piranha plant here. I don't want to put a solid black outline on these. I don't want it to be too in your face. I want it to sit back a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to use a dark red ink for that, just so that it defines it, but it's not too overpowering. Usually I'll have an idea in my mind of how I want the finished piece to look. Usually I'll try and go down the lines of warm versus cold. I always want to try and achieve contrast, and yeah, if I want the piece to be warm or if I want it to be cold. So based off of that, I'll choose which inks I think are going to lend themselves well to that. I know this piranha plant is going to be mostly red anyway, so yeah, just using this slightly darker red ink to outline the spots on the flower is going to bring it all together nicely. I like to use Eternal because they've got a really wide range of colors to choose from, and just having been doing this for so long, I've tried lots of different brands. And don't get me wrong, there's other brands out there that are great, but I find Eternal offers the most in terms of consistency for the thickness of the ink, the viscosity of the ink. It all seems to be pretty much the same, with the exception of a few, but most colors, the thickness of the ink seems to be very similar, which for me makes it a lot easier to get through a tattoo if I'm not having to try and figure out which inks need more or less voltage or need me to move quicker or slower. Everything seems to be pretty much the same, so I find that is a massive bonus. All right, just picking out some black outlines now, some thinner lines just around the teeth. I'm using a thinner line because I don't want it again to be too overpowering. I use quite a lot of different line weights in my designs just to help bring certain details forward or let certain things sit back a little bit. I find that using different line weights helps me achieve a greater sense of depth. What I do like to do quite a lot is sculpt my lines. So sometimes it will just be a straight pass. Other times I'll sculpt it a little bit so that you get some nice thinner edges. Comes off to a point a little bit more. Again, it helps just to stop the overall piece looking too flat or one-dimensional. Yeah, it took me a little while to find my style. When I first started tattooing, it was around about the time where people were really only just starting to develop their styles, or what we know as people's styles now. And yeah, it got to a point where I felt like I needed to do that as well. I think what helped me to develop my style is the artists that I was exposed to early on when I first started getting tattoos, and when I first started to do tattoos. People like Joe Capobianco, Tony Ciavaro, Jimmy Lipwalk. They were all some of my favorite styles, some of my favorite artists at the time. The studio that I started off at, the guy there had shelves full of books back when books used to be a thing. And it was all those artists, man. So yeah, that kind of captured my heart a little bit. That style, the almost cartoony, you know, big features. Yeah, and it just, I don't know, it struck a chord within me, and that's sort of how I wanted to present myself. So yeah, it was a conscious decision to try and make a style for myself, and it didn't necessarily come too naturally. I knew what direction I wanted to go in. But yeah, it just takes time. Like, I don't think anybody's ever really lucky enough to just fall into it and be great at what they want to do, or do tattoos that look exactly how they want them to look straight away. It takes time. But you learn lessons from each piece along the way. You learn what works, what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like. And yeah, just sort of build it up from there, really. I think for me, you know, influence comes from everywhere now. Everywhere you look, there's art, there's influence, especially online. You know, social medias and stuff like that. Following other artists, you'll see other people doing things, and you can kind of pick up on little details, things that you like from them, and try and incorporate that into your own work. It's a mixed bag, man. Like, sometimes the ideas flow really naturally. You'll sit down to draw something and it just comes out of you really easily, and it ends up looking similar to how you had it in your mind. Other times it's a bit more of a process, and you have to work through it a little bit more, by trial and error, really. You sketch something, it doesn't quite look right, you sketch over it again, you refine little bits, you take bits out. But yeah, usually I've got an idea in mind of roughly how I want it to look. I knew I wanted this to be a horror piece. I love drawing bones, so I thought we'd throw the rib cage in there a little bit. Give him a gnarly look on his face. We're going to get some underlighting in there as well to make it look a little bit more, give it that horror feel. So yeah, I had a good idea of how I wanted it to look from the start. Okay, switch to 11 liner. This is a medium taper, I think, which I really like. It's somewhere between a liner and a round shader. It gives a nice thick solid line. So this is what I'm going to use for some of the heavier edges. So I get a good stretch on the skin by using sort of 3 points of contact. So I'm stretching this way with my fingers, stretching down with my thumb, and in this hand, the sort of ball of my hand, if you like, is pulling the skin in the direction that I'm sort of also putting the needle. Stretch on the skin is really important, otherwise it ends up just flapping around and you get a really kind of bouncy, inconsistent line. So when I'm outlining, I want to make sure that I've got a really solid base, like my hands feel like they're in a good place. I try and make sure that I'm going to be able to pull each line in one go. I try and pull away where I can, Sometimes it just doesn't quite allow for that and you end up pulling towards you a little bit. But yeah, I think as long as you're pulling or pushing the machine in the direction that the line is going, it should be okay. Generally, if you're pulling away, you're causing a bit less trauma to the skin. Yeah, one thing I do focus on is just going at the right speed. You want to make sure you're giving the needle enough time to actually push the pigment into the skin. Just need to try and find that sweet spot. You can be too fast, you can be too slow. But yeah, you need to actually allow time for the machine to do the work. Most of the movement comes from my hand. It's probably, yeah, more my wrist. It depends again what you're doing. If you've got some really long lines to do, and if you're sat in a position and your client is sat in a position that allows it, then yeah, you probably would end up moving your whole arm a little bit more, because this is all in a fairly localized area. It's mostly just a movement from my hand. If I find I can't complete a line in one pass, you'll see me just sort of lift out towards the end, and then when I go back into it, it's going to be a gentle transition back in, just to sort of pick that line up again. How's the paint, mate? All good? Chilling? Nice. So yeah, I'll keep checking in with my client, make sure that they're okay, just making sure that they're comfortable and they're doing all right, you know, like your client needs to be comfortable so that you can be comfortable, and vice versa, really. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to check in with them every now and then, make sure that they're still alive. Some people are happy to just sort of kick back and switch off and relax, and you don't get much conversation out of them. Other people, they want to chat and they want to sort of talk their way through it. I'm quite happy to take my lead from the client, and whatever makes them more comfortable. If they want to chat, we'll chat. If they want me to shut the fuck up, I'll shut the fuck up. So when I'm outlining, I try and keep the needle sort of fairly sort of true to the skin. I don't want it cutting in at too fine an angle, because then you risk getting a blowout or the ink spreading underneath. You can get away with tilting it a bit, but as long as it's tilting sort of in the direction that you're pulling the line. Also, when I'm doing my outline, I tend not to wipe the skin. I'll just sort of blot with a paper towel just to dab away the excess ink. I find if you wipe too much, you're gonna wear your stencil down quicker than what you want. And also, it doesn't feel very nice for the client if you're just wiping a dry piece of tissue across their skin constantly. So yeah, just a little dab here and there to get rid of the excess ink. For me, outlining, the three most important parts are hand speed, stretch on the skin, and the depth of the needle. Machine speed comes into it as well, but that'll vary from machine to machine. But yeah, everything needs to sort of work with each other. Yeah, I don't worry too much about actually following the line, following the stencil. Your eye, it sounds weird, but your eye will do that naturally. I think for me, the three most important things to focus on are, yeah, speed, stretch, and depth. If you focus on those three things, you're gonna get a good line. Yeah, just go steady, go easy. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you're worried about it, if you're nervous about it, you know, just go really careful. You can always add a little bit more, but you can't take it away. So yeah, just start in a place that's easy to get to. It's a nice, comfortable position. Just build it up from there. I'll start every tattoo I do with a nice sort of easy few lines first, just to, I don't know, get yourself dialed in, I suppose, and just sort of like a warm up. And then once you get into the bigger, bolder, longer lines, you should be in the swing of it by then. That's probably another good thing to touch on, actually, like just health in tattooing and trying to look after yourself. It's one of those things that you kind of want to pay attention to it before it becomes an issue. And yeah, just trying to be kind to yourself, kind to your body. If that means doing daily stretches or going to do a yoga class or something like that, I'd say that's a good idea. You don't want to get 10 years down the line and wish you'd started 10 years ago. Because it is a very sort of sedentary lifestyle, and we do end up sitting in or contorting ourselves into weird and wonderful positions without even knowing it. It's just sometimes you'll be working away and all of a sudden you'll be tying yourself up like a pretzel. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to try and be conscious of how you do have yourself in your client position to begin with, but also, yeah, just in terms of longevity and looking after your body, do some fucking exercises, man. So for outlining and as well for my black shading, I've been using dynamic for quite a long time now. It's a really good, just consistent ink. It's good for everything really. Lines tattoo really well with it. They heal really well with it. And again, for large areas of black, it's easy to put in, heals well. Again, you can mix it with solutions to make gradients and it heals really well, it tattoos really well. So yeah, just generally a good quality ink. I like dynamic a lot. You might fall into the trap of thinking, well, black ink is just black ink. It's not. There's different qualities and again, different sort of thicknesses. Some of that just comes down to personal preference. Some of it will be better for certain jobs and certain applications. You just have to try it and see. So for most of the outline on this piece, I'm switching between 7-liner, a 9-liner, and the 11, which is the medium taper. The 7 and the 9 are both a long taper, and the 11's the medium taper. It gives me a slightly wider spread. You can see I'm just picking out certain areas where I want a thicker line on some of the corners, and then I'll just taper it off when I want it to be a bit thinner. Again, I find for stuff like this, the different line weights really help with the expression of the character. Especially this guy, we want him to look kind of angry, kind of manic. So yeah, giving him some nice sharp edges and thick lines is going to help to achieve that. So I put quite a lot of time into the line work. I find that makes up a good proportion of the structure of my tattoos. That's again just a personal preference, a style. You don't necessarily have to have super thick lines in there or loads of sculpted lines, but for me and what I like to do and the tattoos, how I like them to look, line work probably is about 25% of the entire process. Yeah, so this is the 11-liner still. I'm using this with some sort of brownish ink just to outline the little fireballs with, because again, I don't want them to be too overpowering, too in your face. So yeah, putting a coloured outline around them instead of a black outline just helps them to drop back a little bit. Yeah, I really like the Stella 2.0 cartridges. I've been using them for a little while now. They're really consistent, really nice to use. Good selection of sizes. Yeah, just all round good stuff. Affordable as well, man. And that's a big thing for a lot of people, a lot of tattooers these days. Is it's great that there's so many different products available. A lot of them are really expensive, and when you add up all the different bits of equipment that we use per tattoo now, it's nice to have a good, solid, reliable brand of cartridges that don't cost the earth. And yeah, honestly, like, I've not had any issues with them so far. I think a lot of other brands of cartridges that I've tried, you know, every now and then within the box, you'll get a couple of dodgy ones, either the membrane snaps or it'll be just a bit off kilter or whatever. But no, so far, Stella 2.0 has been decent. Yeah, so I was mostly using Quadrant before, but then switched over to Stella 2.0. They're as good, I think, and yeah, a lot more affordable. So yeah, again, when they get into the really kind of fleshy areas, like at the top of the thigh where I am now, that stretch on the skin, consistent hand speed and depth is really important. And again, just trying to get it done in one go so you haven't got to keep going back over a typically quite sensitive piece of skin. That's what I'll do with most large tattoos like this as well, you know, regardless of whether either one of us is struggling at various points in the day. I'll just make a point of jumping up, having a little stretch, getting some blood moving for the both of us. Typically don't stop for too long, but yeah, every now and then, quick little 5 minutes is really beneficial. Okay, I think the outline is done. So at this stage, I'm going to give it a good squirt with the Butterlux foam soap. This is really good. It's really kind to the skin, but also it's great at just lifting up all the excess bits of ink, the stuff that's dried on there, some little bits of blood as well. So yeah, it just means that you haven't got to scrub wildly at a sore piece of skin just with a soapy towel. Get a bit of foaming soap on there as well, and it just cleans it up a treat. It's definitely one of my must-have products. Cool, so at this stage, just gonna have a quick look at the outline, check that I'm happy that it's all in there and all as it's supposed to be. And if there's any little bits that I need to revisit, I'll do that now. Give the tattoo another little wash, and then we're going to get started with the shading. So for this, I'm going to start with my blacks. Generally I work from dark to light. There is the odd exception, but yeah, for this, I'm going to start with some black bits, and I'm going to go in some of the places that I know I want to be solid black. I'm going to get those done first. For this, I'm using, again, Stella 2.0, 11 curved Magnum. And I'm going to be running my Tora machine at about 5.5 volts, maybe a little bit more. And again, this is just dynamic black. Right, you ready, pal?
Ready.
Here we go. So yeah, I usually just pick a small section, just somewhere to start, but a nice easy little bit so that we can both get a feel for the shading. I like to hang my needles out relatively far. I find this helps control the ink flow, and it also just helps me to see where the tips of the needles are a little bit more easily, but I still am only working off the tip of the needles. The areas that I know I want to be solid, packed in black, just be a gentle little circular motion. It's kind of a circle, it's kind of a back and forth. And yeah, just making sure we get tight into those lines. We don't want to leave any gaps where we can help it. Although I've got the finished product kind of in my mind already, at this stage I'll keep checking back and forth to a loose reference, a loose colour study that I've done, just to make sure that all the darks are in the right place, all the lights are in the right place. So I'm just trying to transition this black out. You can see I'm doing a little whipping motion. This just helps get a nice soft gradient from black into skin tone. Hand speed again is fairly important here. I like to be quite deliberate with what I'm doing when I'm whipping blacks or whatever colour ink I'm using. Just so that you don't have to keep going back over the same areas. I find if you're a little bit more deliberate in your actions, you're going to cause less trauma to the skin overall. I would say the piece of advice that stuck with me the most is just to go easy. Like I said earlier, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Like there shouldn't be any rush. You know, a tattoo takes as long as it takes. And there's lots of different variables that can affect that. Be that you, the equipment you're using, or it could be your client, you know, things they can't control, like the condition of their skin or pain tolerance. Every tattoo will have its own challenges. But yeah, best thing is just to dial it back, do things properly. And if it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer. Cool, so here I'm just going around some of the edges. I'm putting some black just in the background just to help separate it from the skin a little bit, give us a little bit of extra contrast. I'm trying to get a nice sharp little line. I'm leaving sort of 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters gap. So I'm going to go back into that later with a nice bright color. Have a nice pop around the edge of it. Yeah, just using the back of the mag, get a nice crisp edge, and then gradually fill it in and whip it out. All right, other side. Still using the 11 mag. I really like a curved 11 mag. There's not much you can't do with it. For this style of piece and for this size of piece, this is a good size needle. It's really good for packing, and it can even get into some of the tighter areas. The main thing that I remember being a young artist is you kind of want to progress so quickly, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but also there's no finish line. You can't complete tattooing. You'll keep learning, you'll keep progressing. So yeah, I think as a younger artist, maybe I should have spent a little bit more time on certain things rather than just trying to get to the finish line, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's hopefully a long career, and hopefully you'll keep learning throughout. think some good advice for younger artists is definitely get out of your studio as much as you can. You know, go and spend time with other artists, go and spend time at conventions. It's all very well having the world at your fingertips as far as Instagram goes, but there's so much more that happens beyond that. And just spending time in different environments with different artists, different tattooers, you'll learn so much. You just have to be like a sponge and kind of take it all in. But yeah, get out there, meet people, experience things, see things. Both working and visiting conventions, I think it can be really beneficial. You'll just see things, you'll learn things, people doing things slightly different ways. Like whenever I do go to a convention, or if I go and get tattooed by someone else in a different studio, or go and do a guest spot at a different studio, you'll always pick up on something that somebody's doing slightly differently. And it'll be like a light bulb moment. You'll look at it and you'll think, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. And it's always good to have a network of artists, other tattooers that you can call upon if you've got questions or queries, or just want to run ideas past as well. It's good to get out there and meet people. Cool, so here I'm putting in some kind of opaque greys. I like to use greys a lot where an area would otherwise be white. I find it just helps to give it a little bit more depth. And also grey is going to hold up a little bit better over time than just plain white wood. But yeah, here I'm just trying to use the greys to keep it light but also cast some shadows at the same time. Okay, I'm going to start getting some colours into the bones and the rib cage. I want this all to be a fairly sort of dark, murky green. So yeah, these are all eternal inks that I'm using. Usually what I'll do for a large piece like this is once all the outline's done, I'll probably get this bottom half of it completed before I move up to the top half. Basically so that I don't then have to come back a couple of hours later and go into it when it's already aggravated and sore. I do find that this helps me to move through the piece a little bit more quickly as well. So as I'm moving through, trying to find little areas that I can make really, really dark. And then I'm gonna pop some lighter inks next to that to try and help achieve a good bit of contrast and a bit of texture at the same time. Usually what I do as well is I won't use a straight color to begin with. I'll usually sort of dip into I'll have my main color, so in this case it's the green, and then I'll dip into a bit of black just real quick, or sometimes like a dark gray, just to shade it a little bit. And then gradually I'll keep dipping back into the straight color, and it will lighten up each time as I go. You do need to be careful not to put too much black into your straight color. It might be worth having a second pot out. Yeah, if you go too dark too soon, then you're gonna spoil that ink cap and it's all gonna be too dark. Something else I like to try and keep in mind when I'm approaching these pieces, as far as contrast goes, it doesn't necessarily have to be light and dark. You can find contrast between thick and thin, which is why I do the different line weights. You can find contrast between warm and cold. You can find contrast between soft and hard edges. So yeah, I always have that in the back of my mind when I'm at this stage in the tattoo as well. Cool, so I'm nearly done with this first section, the ribcage section. Just going through now, putting in some highlights with different coloured inks. I'll put some nice warm golden yellow on this side. It's going to be picked up by this fireball. And then for contrast, I'm going to get some aquamarine blue, so give it a nice cool edge on the opposite side. Still with the 11 mag. Still just using the corner and the back edge just to get the nice crisp edges. So I'm about to move on to the lower portion of this piranha plant flower. But before I do that, I'm going to give my guy a quick minute to catch his breath. All right, here we go with some red tones. I believe this is Eternal Ink's Rusty Red. I'm going to use this as the slightly darker areas of the tattoo of the piranha plant flower, and I'm going to blend it into some lipstick red, some nice bright lipstick red. Cool, yeah, so when I come to blend colors, there's a couple of different approaches that I usually take. So through here with these greens, because it's quite a small tight area, I was just dipping back and forth between the inks to get a nice easy gradient. In areas like this, where it's a much larger, sort of longer blend, what I did with the darker red was whipped it out. Nice long, slow, controlled whips. And then I'm taking the lighter red. I'm going to pack it into this top area where I want it to be really solid and really vibrant. And then as I come down to the darker red that's already been whipped out, I'm gradually going to open my hand up a little bit, make the circle slightly larger, slightly looser, and I'm going to whip just into that darker red. Sometimes what it takes is to go in a slightly different direction as well. Call it cross-hatching. So yeah, I'll go one direction and I'll come back, change the angle of the machine, and then just quickly whip over the top of that as well. And there we have a nice smooth blend. I'm using the Tora machine from Gazz Tattoo, or JD MFG, I think it is. Wicked machine, same guy that makes the anvil and the governor. This is their pen style machine, but it has an armature bar, first of its kind. Yeah, I really like it. It's very similar to a coil machine, which is good for me. I used to love using coil machines. Mostly just switched over to rotary for the convenience, but this seems to be covering all bases. So this is the 4.2 or the 4.5 mil stroke, I think. The larger of the options. I prefer a longer stroke for color. It allows me to run the machine on relatively low voltage, but you still get a nice solid hit. And just, yeah, you get a little bit more control over what it is you're doing. I'm running the machine quite slowly, I suppose, as far as cycles per second or hertz goes, but that's going to allow me to really pack the color in. It's going to be kind on the skin. Yeah, it's a really versatile machine. It's good for outlines, good for shading, good for color. So I'm going to get into this top half of the tattoo now. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to start with the bits that I know I want to be black, get those bashed out first, and then just, yeah, gradually move through this whole section. Because I know I want this to be black. I'm doing the mustache first because it's just a nice easy spot to start in. I'll get the dark tones done in this top half again, so yeah. I know this is all solid black, so I can just crack on and get this done. Like saturating black, it is kind of one of the basic skills, if you like, but it's also really fucking difficult to do properly and to do well. Best tip, I think, is, again, just go easy. Make sure you've got a good stretch on the skin. Yeah, just go steady, just slowly pack it in. What you can do as well is, again, cross hatch. So if you put it in one way and it looks like it's maybe not quite as saturated as you want it to be, just turn your machine a bit, different angle, go in a slightly different direction, just so that you get the needles penetrating sort of under the skin in different directions, pushing the pigment in different directions and helping to achieve that really solid saturation. So one thing I do like to do when I'm doing just black areas, rather than doing it all just completely solid black, I'll throw a bit of grey in there just to lighten it up a little bit. Helps to give those areas a little bit of a curve. Just a little bit more depth, makes it all a little bit more interesting. So here I'm just applying a thin layer of balm or processed butter, whatever you want to call it. It's going to help basically just to keep the skin a little bit more moisturized, but also it's just a protective barrier on top of the tattoo that we've already done. So just in case I do end up wiping some of the darker pigments over there, it's not going to actually rub it into the pores. It's going to get caught in the balm and I can just wipe it away. So yeah, when you do approach a tattoo like this, if you've already got a section of it done and then you've got to go in next to it with darker tones, you need to be careful to wipe away in the right direction. What you don't want to do is drag black over these greens and yellows and blues because it will end up staining it. So when I'm packing colour, it's the same thing as when I'm packing black. You know, just nice, easy, steady little circles / little back and forth motion. I'll have my machine slightly angled so that the needles end up being grouped a bit tighter together. But yeah, it's the same process, and that's basically what tattooing is its consistency. Just making sure everything's the same movement, same speed, same pressure. And that pretty much applies whatever the color is. If you are struggling with an area, sometimes it's better just to leave it for a little while. Go and do something else, work in a different area, let that skin settle down. And then if you need to, you can revisit it. But yeah, if something's not quite going to plan, if you're struggling to pack the color in the skin, go and do something else for a little bit. Give that skin a bit of a chance to settle down, and then you'll be able to see what's what. So I tend not to use too much just neat white as highlights in my work. Instead, what I do is, where I do want to get a little highlight, a little bright tip on the edge of something, is I'll just take the color that I'm using, so in this case a red, and I'll dip into a little bit of white. So it brightens it up, makes it almost pink, but still I get that nice highlight next to a darker red tone. So what I'm doing now is blending pink into the aquamarine blue. So if I'm blending two completely different colors, I'm going to use the whip motion to sort of drag that needle over the top. Just get a nice long sort of transition. I don't want to mix the two colors in the tip really, because then I'm going to end up with a completely different color. But yeah, doing it this way, get a nice soft transition, a nice soft blend, but the pink stays pink and the blue stays blue. I like to try and achieve a lot of vibrancy in my tattoos, and the way I do that is basically through contrast. So color selection, sort of complementary colors, but then yeah, contrast from light and dark. So someone once explained it to me as, you can have the brightest green in the world, and if you just put it in the skin and the only contrast is the skin tone, it's not going to show up that bright. But if you've got black or a darker tone next to it, you can achieve that contrast. It's going to make the bright look really bright and the dark look really dark. So yeah, vibrancy for me is cool versus warm, dark versus light. So I like to use some really bright tones, like this bright green I'm using here. I've also laced it with a little bit of white just to brighten it up a little bit more. But just little bits in select areas so that it stands out. If you use too much super bright tones, it's all going to cancel each other out. The whole piece will end up looking washed out. If you have select bits in select places, it should do the trick. So this is, I think, mulberry or electric raspberry, I'm not sure. So this is just a pink tone that I'm going to put in the tongue. Inside, not going to put too much detail into this area. We've got a nice shadow sort of being cast in the back of his mouth. But yeah, I just want to put a little pop of colour just in his mouth there, just in the tongue. Now I'm going in with some of the warmer yellows, just on the underside of his chin and his cheek, to try and get that sort of glowing effect. So I'll go from Eternal True Gold to Eternal Golden Yellow for this. Yeah, so I'm putting on the opposite side to where I put all the yellow, I'm going in with a purple and a lighter blue, just to give a cooler tone on the opposite side of the face, just to help give the impression that this is in the shadowed side. So for these highlighted areas, I'm using the same aquamarine color that I used in the One Up logo up here. And just pulled it all the way down this side as well, just to help tie the whole piece together. There's no point in me using a different blue there really. Finished all the skin tones in his face now, all the highlights and the lowlights. Really just got the eyes left to do and some highlights around the edges. Generally I leave the eyes till last because usually they're the lightest part of it. But also I just really enjoy the eyes. I like putting all the expression in the eyes. Something to look forward to at the end of the tattoo. All right, we're gonna get the eyes done. I'm gonna use a 9 round shader for this little bit, just to get this little swirly psychedelic effect in his eye. So yeah, this is 35 gauge. Same as everything I've been using today is a 35 gauge. Don't really use many bug pins. Don't really feel like there's a need for it in my work. Everything's quite bold anyway. So yeah, tend to stick to 35 or 12 gauge, as you might call it. Okay, back to the mag, the curved mag now. Gonna give him some really light pink eyes. Generally, I tend not to use just sort of straight white or anything for the eyes. You know, no one's got completely bright white eyes anyway. Usually I'll dull it down with a color. For this guy, I want it to be quite kind of psychedelic anyway, so yeah, pink is gonna look pretty cool. But sometimes I'll use sort of a greyish purple as a base tone and then go back in over that with lighter whites. Okay, so we're nearly there. Last thing I'm going to do is just put a nice bright edge around here. I'm going to use the same blue that I've used in the 1UP logo. So yeah, just around the edges, just a nice bright highlight. Okay guys, we're all finished. Just going to give it a wipe down, we'll let it settle, and then we'll move on to the aftercare. Okay guys, so tattoo's finished. It's had a little bit of time to settle down. Client's checked it out in the mirror. He's really happy. I'm really happy. We've got some good pictures, so bonus. So to finish up, I'm going to wrap it up. First, I'm going to apply just a thin layer of the Butterlux balm. I use this as a process balm, but also I recommend it for aftercare. It's really, really good stuff. Really good for the skin. Just helps to keep it all nice and moisturized. Don't need to go crazy with it, just a thin layer. Make sure you work it into all the little nooks. Next up, dermalized shield, just an armor pad basically. I'm going to stick that over the tattoo, get it all nice and secure. This can now stay in place for probably the remainder of the evening, just until the tattoo's had a good bit of time to settle down, bleeding stopped. So for the aftercare process, I recommend using the dermalized shields for a good sort of 3 or 4 days afterwards, especially at night time, just to keep it protected, to stop it from sticking to your bed sheets and to stop any nastiness from getting in there. The main benefit of these pads over cling film, for my taste, is it's breathable, but it also soaks up all the goo that's going to come out of the tattoo over the next 24-ish hours. It just means that it's not being trapped in by the cling film. Bacteria isn't really just being rubbed back into the tattoo. This pad's going to soak it all up. You peel it off in the morning and everything's nice and clean. For the next week or so, Johnny's going to moisturize it with Butterlux 2 to 3 times a day. Where he feels he needs to have it covered up, he's going to cover it up, but he's also going to let the air get to it for a good amount of the day as well. Main emphasis on keeping it clean, keeping it moisturized, keeping it out of the sun. Other than that, your body's going to do a lot of the hard work for you. You just need to help it along with keeping it clean and keeping it moisturized. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to know anything more about me or my style, you can follow me at Gazz Tattoos on Instagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Killer Ink YouTube channel.